Disclaimer. Before we dive in, viewer discretion is advised. This content is for entertainment purposes. In an explosive moment on The View, Scarlett Johansson faces intense scrutiny from Whoopi Goldberg, challenging her on Hollywood's double standards. Watch as Scarlett defends herself against accusations and sparks a heated debate on women's treatment in the industry. This showdown is full of raw honesty and composure you don't want to miss. Like, subscribe, and enjoy the full video. In a world where Hollywood's brightest stars often keep their personal lives under tight wraps, Scarlett Johansson has always been known for her composed, graceful public persona. But when she stepped into The View that October morning, she had no idea that her carefully curated image would soon be tested. What was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance for her latest film turned into an explosive encounter that had viewers on the edge of their seats. The morning started off as expected. Scarlett entered the set, flashing her signature smile, exuding elegance in a sleek black dress, her hair neatly pulled back into a bun. The audience cheered as she took her seat, and the first few minutes of the segment played out like any other celebrity interview. The hosts praised her acting, discussed her roles, and lightly touched on her film career. But beneath the surface, something was brewing. As the conversation shifted, Whoopi Goldberg, never one to shy away from tough questions, took the lead. With the eyes of millions of viewers upon her, Whoopi pivoted from the typical film chat to a much more uncomfortable topic: Scarlett's past casting choices. Scarlett, you've portrayed some powerful women on screen, but recently, people have been saying some of your casting choices were, let's say, controversial, Whoopi began, her tone shifting from lighthearted to serious. This wasn't just another celebrity interview where actors could skirt tough questions with rehearsed responses. Whoopi wasn't interested in playing it safe. She had a point to prove, and she wasn't going to let Scarlett off the hook easily. What followed was a moment that sent shockwaves through the View studio and beyond. Scarlett, visibly taken aback, tried to keep her composure. "Well," she said cautiously, "I think every actor's job is to explore humanity in all its forms." It was a line she'd delivered countless times before, a defense rooted in the idea that art should challenge boundaries. But Whoopi wasn't convinced. "But don't you think it's a privilege to take roles that others from those communities might not even get the chance to audition for?" Whoopi pressed. It was at that moment that the temperature in the room began to rise. Scarlett's calm exterior was starting to crack, and viewers could feel the tension building. The conversation wasn't just about a disagreement over film choices. It was becoming a reckoning, a public test of Scarlett's ability to handle the heat of political and cultural scrutiny. And here lies the crux of the issue. In Hollywood, when a star like Scarlett Johansson steps into the spotlight, the public demands more than just a great performance. They demand accountability. They expect celebrities to speak on issues beyond their craft, issues that are often tied to race, privilege, and social justice. And while Scarlett had certainly faced criticism before, this time felt different. The questions weren't going away. The scrutiny was intensifying. For Scarlett, this wasn't just an uncomfortable interview, it was a moment of reckoning. As the cameras rolled and the debate over casting choices escalated, it became clear, The View wasn't just asking her about a movie. They were demanding a much deeper reflection on her place in Hollywood and the responsibilities that come with fame. This marked the beginning of an intense showdown that would unfold throughout the rest of the interview. The gloves were off, and Scarlett was about to face one of the toughest confrontations of her career, one that would challenge her like never before. The stage had been set, the lights were bright, and the audience eagerly awaited Scarlett Johansson's responses. But as the conversation shifted from casual pleasantries to a direct confrontation, it became clear, The View was no longer interested in the typical celebrity interview. They were ready for a reckoning. Whoopi Goldberg, always known for her unflinching honesty, wasn't going to let Scarlett off easy. It was clear from the beginning that Whoopi had a specific agenda. She didn't want just another surface-level conversation about Scarlett's latest film. No, Whoopi was focused on something far more pressing. As a seasoned host with years of experience, she understood the power of her platform, and she wasn't about to waste it on mere promotion. What started as a standard interview quickly turned into an intense, high-stakes dialogue about accountability, privilege, and the challenges faced by women in Hollywood. "Scarlett," Whoopi began, her voice steady but sharp, "you've played strong women on screen, but recently, people online have been calling some of your casting choices, let's say, controversial. What do you have to say about that?" The question wasn't just about Scarlett's work. It was an invitation for Scarlett to reflect on her place in a much larger, more complicated cultural conversation. Whoopi wasn't just interested in Scarlett's thoughts on acting techniques or her latest film. She wanted to know how the actress viewed her responsibility in a world where Hollywood's decisions can have wide-reaching implications. Scarlett, ever the professional, tried to keep her composure. "I think every actor's job is to explore humanity in all its forms," she explained. But this wasn't enough for Whoopi, who immediately seized on the opportunity to dig deeper. "But isn't that a privilege?" she shot back. "Isn't it a privilege to take roles that might have gone to someone from that community? Someone who might not even get the chance to audition?" The question hung in the air, and Scarlett's expression tightened. This wasn't just a casual discussion about acting, it was a personal challenge, questioning not only her career choices but her ethical standpoint in a world that increasingly demands social responsibility from its celebrities. Scarlett, taken aback by the sharpness of Whoopi's challenge, hesitated before responding. "I understand that conversation," Scarlett admitted. "But I also believe in creative freedom and learning from the discourse around these choices." However, her attempt to deflect the question by focusing on artistic liberty didn't sit well with Whoopi. She pressed harder, "Isn't it a bit of a privilege to learn from those conversations after the role's already been taken? After someone else might have been denied the opportunity?" The tension in the room grew palpable as Whoopi's words struck at the heart of Hollywood's ongoing battle over representation. It wasn't just about Scarlett's choices, it was about the system that allowed her to make those choices in the first place. Whoopi's directness forced Scarlett to reckon with her position of power in an industry where marginalized voices are often silenced. But Whoopi wasn't done. She wasn't about to let Scarlett skirt around the question of accountability. "You've made mistakes," Whoopi said, her voice unwavering. "But isn't it time for you to answer for those mistakes? To be accountable for your actions?" This was no longer just an interview. It was a challenge, a call to answer for the privileges of fame and the responsibility that comes with it. And in this moment, Whoopi had put Scarlett on trial, testing whether the actress was ready to face the unflinching scrutiny of not just Hollywood, but the public. With every word, Whoopi reminded Scarlett, and the audience, that no celebrity, no matter how famous or beloved, can escape the harsh glare of accountability forever. The real question now was whether Scarlett could navigate this confrontation with grace, or whether the pressure would force her to crumble under the weight of Whoopi's unyielding challenge. As the tension between Scarlett Johansson and Whoopi Goldberg mounted on The View, something significant began to unfold. This wasn't just about a Hollywood actress defending her film choices, it was about something deeper, something more systemic. Scarlett's battle in this confrontation became a clear stand against the double standards that plague not only Hollywood but the broader entertainment industry. Whoopi, relentless in her questioning, didn't stop at merely critiquing Scarlett's casting choices. She went straight to the heart of the issue: how women in Hollywood are expected to behave under a microscope. In this moment, it was clear that Whoopi wasn't just challenging Scarlett on her career decisions. She was challenging the very framework that allows some stars to succeed while others are punished for similar mistakes. "You've made mistakes," Whoopi stated, her tone matter-of-fact, almost as if she were laying down the gauntlet. "But isn't it time for you to answer for those mistakes? To be accountable?" This wasn't a typical celebrity soundbite. This was an accusation rooted in the larger, deeply embedded issue of privilege. And Scarlett, feeling the weight of this scrutiny, leaned into the conversation, her voice steady but revealing a sharp edge that had been building. "I think everyone learns in their own time," Scarlett replied, attempting to retain her composure. "I've been open about my experiences and my mistakes, but I don't think it's fair to define my entire career by one controversy." Her response, while measured, was laced with frustration. This was the moment Scarlett made it clear that she was tired of constantly being asked to apologize for past decisions that were often magnified by the public's obsession with female celebrities. The irony, of course, was glaring. Men in Hollywood, men who had made similar missteps or controversial choices, didn't face the same kind of unrelenting public punishment. Scarlett, now visibly uncomfortable with the line of questioning, responded in a way that sent a ripple through the studio. "Men make mistakes all the time in this industry, and they're allowed to evolve quietly, to move on without constant interrogation. Women are expected to publicly apologize, to perform guilt, to prove endlessly that they've changed." Her words were a direct challenge to the deeply ingrained double standards that have long plagued the entertainment industry. Men, even those who had made controversial choices, were allowed to learn and grow without the same public trial. Women, on the other hand, faced a continuous cycle of apology and accountability. Scarlett was tired of being held to a different standard, a reality that, for many women in Hollywood, had become all too familiar. The atmosphere in the studio shifted. Some audience members nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Scarlett had brought an uncomfortable truth into the open. The unspoken rules of Hollywood, rules that allowed male stars to evolve without scrutiny, were now under fire. Whoopi, of course, wasn't ready to let this go. She countered, "But when you have a platform like this, when you've achieved what you have, people expect you to be aware of your privilege. They expect you to be accountable." But Scarlett wasn't backing down. With every word, she made it clear, it wasn't about refusing accountability, but about the unequal expectations placed on women in the industry. It wasn't just about the roles she played or the choices she made. It was about how society and the media continue to punish women for the same mistakes that men are allowed to escape. In this critical moment, Scarlett wasn't just defending herself. She was defending every woman in Hollywood who had been unfairly scrutinized, whose mistakes had been amplified, whose growth had been overlooked. It wasn't just a discussion about casting. It was a conversation about the systemic double standards that continue to shape Hollywood's narrative. And Scarlett Johansson, in this conversation, was making sure her voice was heard, loud and clear. As the conversation unfolded between Scarlett Johansson and Whoopi Goldberg on The View, it became impossible to ignore the deeper cultural implications at play. What had initially begun as a discussion about casting choices had morphed into something far more significant, a public reckoning not just for Scarlett, but for the treatment of women in Hollywood and the broader entertainment industry. Scarlett's candid words about double standards in Hollywood resonated far beyond the set of The View. As she expressed her frustrations with the relentless public scrutiny placed on women, the conversation sparked a cultural debate that reached far beyond celebrity gossip. In that moment, Scarlett wasn't just defending herself, she was representing every woman in Hollywood who had ever been unfairly held to a higher standard. For years, the entertainment industry has been known for its double standards. Men, even those with scandalous pasts, are often given the space to evolve quietly. Women, however, are expected to apologize profusely and prove their worth over and over again. The media, the public, and even the industry itself seem to demand that women constantly prove their redemption. This demand for endless accountability is exhausting, and Scarlett, in that heated moment, voiced what so many women in Hollywood and beyond have felt: a desire for fairness, a call for equality, and a demand for the right to move forward without being eternally tethered to past mistakes. Whoopi, though respectful of Scarlett's words, wasn't ready to completely back down. She pushed the conversation further, asking, "When you've reached the level of success that you have, isn't there an expectation for you to be aware of the power and privilege you hold?" It was a valid question, one that has been asked countless times of celebrities who occupy such massive platforms. But Scarlett, who had already demonstrated immense poise under pressure, responded with unwavering clarity, "Yes, but that doesn't mean I should constantly be made to answer for my mistakes, particularly when men in this industry are not held to the same standard." This statement marked a pivotal moment in the conversation. It wasn't just about Scarlett Johansson or Whoopi Goldberg anymore. It was about the cultural conditioning that dictates how women are expected to behave in the spotlight. The public, Scarlett pointed out, is more likely to forgive men for their past missteps without constant reminders of their mistakes, but women in Hollywood have to carry the weight of their past actions indefinitely. The conversation shifted from being a personal confrontation to a broader discussion about how women in the public eye are treated. Scarlett's words were a call to arms for fairness, an open challenge to the media and public at large. Why should women be punished more harshly than men for the same mistakes? Why are women held to a different, often impossible, standard of accountability? The cultural debate that Scarlett inadvertently ignited wasn't just about Hollywood. It was a debate that extended far beyond the confines of the entertainment industry. It was about the systemic inequities women face in every field, from politics to business, from sports to art. As the studio audience began to react with murmurs of agreement, it became clear that this was more than just an interview. It was a moment of cultural reckoning. Scarlett Johansson, in her quiet but powerful way, had opened the door to a much-needed conversation about gender equality, forgiveness, and the persistent, unfair treatment of women in the public eye. The real question now was, would this conversation continue, or would it be brushed aside like so many others before it? For Scarlett, it was clear, she wasn't backing down. And in doing so, she had sparked a cultural moment that couldn't easily be ignored. By the time the conversation had reached its peak on The View, It was clear that Scarlett Johansson had done something rare in Hollywood. She had confronted the industry's double standards head-on, she had taken on an uncomfortable debate about privilege, and she had stood her ground without succumbing to the intense pressure to apologize for her existence. But it wasn't just her words that made this moment significant, it was the way she carried herself through it all, with quiet strength and unwavering composure. Throughout the interview, Scarlett never lost her poise. Even as the questioning became increasingly personal, even as Whoopi Goldberg and the other hosts pressed her on the difficult topics of accountability and privilege, Scarlett remained calm. Her responses were measured, thoughtful, and sharp. She never allowed herself to be boxed into a corner or made to feel small. This wasn't a confrontation that required shouting or anger. Instead, Scarlett delivered her truths with dignity, showing that sometimes the most powerful response to scrutiny is simply standing firm in your beliefs. In Hollywood, where public figures are often expected to smile through their discomfort and deflect tough questions with rehearsed answers, Scarlett Johansson broke the mold. She didn't deflect. She didn't hide. She stood up and spoke her truth, unapologetically and without hesitation. "I'm tired of being mischaracterized," she said, her voice firm, her gaze steady. "I think I've been held to a different standard. That's not bitterness, that's fact." In that single moment, Scarlett took ownership of her career, her choices, and her identity. She didn't shy away from the questions. Instead, she used the platform to remind everyone watching that she was more than her mistakes. She was a person who had learned, grown, and evolved, and she had the right to continue doing so without being forced to constantly defend her humanity. The message was clear. Hollywood standards of accountability don't apply equally to everyone, and women, in particular, are often subjected to a level of scrutiny that men simply aren't. Scarlett's words resonated with many who felt that same burden in their own lives, and her strength in the face of that pressure became a symbol of resilience. The audience, initially unsure of where the conversation was heading, found themselves rooting for her, clapping, nodding, and silently acknowledging that Scarlett had just set a new precedent for how women in Hollywood should stand up for themselves. But perhaps the most striking part of this encounter was how Scarlett handled the final moments. Whoopi, ever the formidable force, took a step back, her usual sharp edge softened by the rawness of the conversation. As the segment wrapped up, Scarlett's final words echoed the core of her stance: "There's a difference between a question and an accusation." It wasn't just a remark aimed at Whoopi, it was a message to the entire industry. It was a reminder that scrutiny, while necessary, should never veer into unfair judgment. As the cameras cut to commercial, it was clear that the view had witnessed something that transcended typical celebrity drama. What had started as an uncomfortable interview had evolved into a cultural moment, a reflection on gender, power, and the challenges women face in the public eye. Scarlett Johansson had stood her ground with the kind of grace and honesty that Hollywood so often overlooks. In doing so, she had shown the world that true strength doesn't always come from confrontation. It comes from staying true to yourself, no matter the pressure.